All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another deep dive. You guys know we love to go deep on your questions on all things love and relationships, and that's exactly what we're doing today.
Absolutely.
So, one of our amazing listeners actually sent in this article titled, Are You Ready to Be Mr. or Mrs. the Character Behind the Title? And
Well, I love this one.
it's so good, right? Like when I saw it in the queue, I was like, oh, we have to talk about this.
Yes.
So get ready because we're going to unpack some really thought-provoking stuff.
See a good one?
It really flips the script on how we usually think about getting ready for marriage.
It really does.
You know, like it's not just about finding the right person or having that perfect wedding day. It's about something much deeper.
Yeah, it's like we think about the externals, right?
Yeah,
Like, do I have the dress? Does the venue look good? But this is about the internals.
exactly. It's about becoming the right person.
Yes.
And the article kicks off with a really interesting point that might seem obvious at first, but when you really dig into it, it's pretty profound. It says that God needs to be the foundation of any lasting love.
Makes sense.
And it even pulls in some verses here like John 13.34 and 1 John 4.8.
Yeah, but I think what the article is getting at is that it's not enough to just like know those verses or have them memorized. It's about actually living them out.
Okay, so how do we do that? What does it actually mean to build our relationships on that foundation?
Well, the article used this really powerful metaphor.
Okay.
It talks about building a house on sand versus building a house on solid rock.
Okay, I've heard that one before.
Right. And we can all imagine
Yeah.
what happens to the house on sand when the storms come.
Yeah, it crumbles.
Right, exactly. It gets washed away.
Yeah.
But the house on the rock, it stands strong.
So how does this apply to love? What's the rock in a relationship?
Well, I think the article is saying that the rock is God's love,
Okay.
right? And it's about building our relationships on his principles, on his design for love.
So it's like those verses we mentioned, those aren't just like nice decorations, they're the actual blueprint.
Fully.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And when we build on that foundation, it changes everything. It changes how we view love. It changes how we approach relationships.
I'm really curious to hear more about that. How does building on that foundation change our perspective on love, like in a practical sense?
Well, for one thing, it helps us to see love as a journey, not just a destination.
Okay.
It's not just about finding the right person and then living happily ever after.
Oh, I like that. It's about growing together, evolving together.
Exactly. And the article uses this analogy that I really love. It talks about how love is like a fine wine.
Hmm. Okay.
Bring on the wine analogies.
Right. So think about it. A good wine, it gets better with age.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see where you're going with this.
Right. It develops complexity, it deepens its flavor over time. And love is kind of like that too.
That's so true. It's easy to get caught up in that initial spark,
Mm-hmm.
those butterflies. But the article is saying, hold on, the best is yet to come.
Mm-hmm. The real depth, the lasting love that takes time.
It's like we need to shift our focus from the initial excitement to the long game. Absolutely.
Right.
And that shift in perspective, it can really change how we approach dating, how we choose a partner.
Okay, so you're saying instead of looking for someone who just gives us those butterflies, we should be looking for someone who we can grow with, someone who can help us become the best versions of ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding someone who shares your values, someone who you can build a life with on that solid rock of God's love.
And just like aging wine, it's not always going to be smooth sailing, right? There are going to be some bumps along the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There will be challenges. There will be times when things feel a bit unsettled, maybe even a little bit rough.
So those challenging times, those are just part of the process.
We are. They're essential for growth.
I guess that's where that solid foundation comes in again, right? It gives us something to hold on to when things get tough.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even in those difficult moments, love is still there. It's still worth fighting for.
That's so good. All right, I'm already feeling like my perspective on love is shifting a little bit. This is great. And you know what? This actually ties in perfectly with the next big point the article makes, which is the idea of singleness as preparation.
Oh, yeah.
And the article uses the example of Adam and Eve,
Yes.
which I thought was really interesting.
So smart.
It points out that God didn't just instantly create Eve for Adam. Like, there was this period of time where Adam was alone, tending the garden, naming the animals, essentially engaging in his purpose before it arrived.
It's like God was preparing him.
Right. It's like God was saying, hey, Adam, get your own house in order before you invite someone else to share it.
Exactly. And I think that's such a powerful message for anyone who's single.
Right.
This season isn't just about waiting for love to show up. It's about preparing for it.
It's about becoming the best version of ourselves
Hmm.
so that when love does come knocking, we're ready.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is speaking to me on a deep level. What about you, listener?
Yeah.
Are you using this time to prepare for love? Or are you just kind of sitting around waiting for it to happen?
Good question.
And the article actually gives some really practical tips for how to use this season well.
Yeah, like what?
It talks about things like prayer Bible study and being part of a community.
Makes sense.
And it's interesting to think about how those activities actually cultivate the kind of character that's essential for a healthy relationship.
Totally. Okay, so let's break those down a bit. Like, what does prayer actually do to prepare us for love?
Yeah, I'm curious too, because it's easy to think of prayer as like a religious duty.
Right.
But the article is suggesting that it's actually a powerful tool for personal growth.
It is. Think about prayer as a conversation with God.
Okay.
The more we engage in that conversation, the deeper our relationship with Him becomes.
Okay.
And as that relationship deepens, we start to see the world and relationships through His eyes.
So it's not just about asking for things or getting our needs met. It's
Yeah.
about aligning our hearts with God's heart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's essential for love. Because if we want to love others,
Yeah.
well, we need to first understand what real love is.
Right. And God is love. So the more time we spend with Him, the more we're going to learn about love and how to actually practice it in our lives.
Makes sense.
Okay, so prayer, that's one piece of the puzzle. What about Bible study?
So the Bible is full of wisdom about relationships.
Yeah.
It talks about how to communicate effectively, how to resolve conflict, how to love unconditionally.
But it's not just about reading it, right?
No, it's about internalizing those principles, letting them shape our thoughts and actions.
It's like the Bible becomes a relationship manual.
Exactly. It gives us a framework for how to build healthy relationships.
Okay, so we got prayer, we've got Bible study. What about community? Why is that important?
So community is where we get to practice love in action.
Yeah.
It's where we learn to be patient and kind and forgiving.
It's one thing to read about those things, but it's a whole other ball game to actually put them into practice in our everyday interactions.
Right. And community provides a safe space to experiment, to mess up, to learn from others.
Integrate.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And through those interactions, we start to develop those essential relationship skills like empathy, active listening, and conflict resolution.
And those skills are gold, not just for romantic relationships, but for every relationship in our lives.
Exactly. So it's like this preparation isn't just about finding a spouse. It's about becoming the kind of person who can love and be loved well, period.
Okay, that's huge.
Yeah,
So whether you're single or in a relationship, this is something we should all be working on.
absolutely.
And it all starts with building our lives on that solid foundation of God's love.
The most important part.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to dive even deeper into this idea of preparing for a love that lasts. All right, we're back. And before the break, we were talking about this idea of singleness as preparation.
Yeah.
This time to really focus on becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Hmm.
And it's so easy to get impatient, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially in today's world where everything is so instant.
Instant gratification.
Exactly. We want everything now. And that includes love.
Right? It's like we swipe right and boom, we expect to find our soulmate.
But the article reminds us that God's timing isn't always our timing.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually pulls in a verse here, Habakkuk 2.3, which talks about a prophecy whose time is already set.
I love that. It's a good reminder that things happen in God's perfect time.
Okay, so that's all well and good, but how do we actually deal with that impatience? How do we shift from feeling frustrated to embracing this time of preparation?
Well, I think it starts with a change in perspective.
Okay.
Instead of obsessing over when we'll meet someone,
Yeah.
what if we focused on who we're becoming in the meantime?
So it's about making the most of this season, right?
Exactly. What if we poured our energy into nurturing our relationship with God, pursuing our passions, serving others?
It's like instead of sitting on the sidelines waiting for the game to start, we're out there training, getting in shape, building our skills.
And when we approach singleness that way, it becomes less about lack and more about abundance.
I love that. It's about investing in ourselves, becoming the kind of people who are ready to love and be loved well.
Exactly. And when we do that, we're actually positioning ourselves to attract the right kind of love.
Because let's be real, the wrong kind of love can be way more painful than being single.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's worth taking the time to get this right.
It is. And it's also important to remember that God sees us. He hears our prayers. He knows the desires of our hearts.
And he hasn't forgotten about us.
Nope.
He's working in our lives even in the season of waiting.
I think that's so encouraging because sometimes it can feel like we're just stuck in this holding pattern,
Right.
but God is always working. He's always moving.
And maybe that waiting, that's actually part of the preparation?
Maybe it is.
Maybe it's those times when we feel lonely or frustrated or even a little bit hopeless. Those are the times when our faith is being refined.
Like those times are shaping us, molding us, preparing us for the love that's coming.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of building on a solid foundation.
Mhm.
We've talked about embracing the season of singleness.
Yes.
But there's one more piece of this puzzle that I want to unpack.
How about that?
And that's the idea of character.
Oh, yeah. This is where the article gets really good.
Because it's not enough to just say, we want a great relationship or we want to be married.
Right.
We actually have to become the kind of people who are capable of having those things.
It's like we need to do some inner work.
And the article actually gives us a really helpful roadmap for that inner work.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It talks about the fruits of the Spirit,
Okay, I've heard of those.
which are listed in Galatians 5.2223.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty powerful lineup. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But I
Wow.
think it's worth taking the time to really dig into what those qualities actually look like in the context of a relationship.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you on that. Because it's one thing to say be more loving, but what does that actually mean?
Right, like how does love actually show up in our everyday interactions with our partner?
That's the real question.
And how about joy? How do we cultivate joy in a relationship when life inevitably throws us curveballs?
Good point.
And what about peace? How do we create a sense of peace in a relationship when disagreements are bound to happen?
Those are all great questions.
And we're going to answer them all when we come back in the final part of this deep dive. Okay, so we're back. And we left off talking about the fruits of the Spirit,
Yes, those incredible character traits.
which the article highlights as like essential ingredients for a strong and healthy relationship.
It's like the recipe for lasting love.
I love that. So we already covered love, joy, and peace.
The foundation?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the next one on the list, which is patience.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because let's be real, patience is not always easy.
Especially in relationships, right?
It's so easy to get frustrated when our partner isn't changing as fast as we'd like or when things aren't moving at the pace we had in mind.
It's like we want to fast forward to the good part.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But the article reminds us that love takes time. It requires patience and grace and understanding.
It's about remembering that our partner, just like us, is a work in progress.
So patience is about meeting our partner where they're at,
Yes, and choosing to love them even when they're not perfect.
even when they're driving us crazy.
Especially them,
And that actually leads us perfectly to the next fruit of the Spirit, which is kindness.
because patience and kindness go hand in hand.
They really do. It's those small acts of kindness, those everyday gestures that show our partner we care.
A listening ear, a thoughtful gesture, a willingness to forgive,
It's about creating a culture of generosity and appreciation in the relationship.
where both of you feel safe to be vulnerable and authentic.
I love that. Okay, so we've got patience, we've got kindness. What's next?
Goodness,
Goodness. Okay, so this one seems a little broader.
it is. It's about living with integrity
Making choices that align with our values.
and striving to make a positive impact on the world.
So it's not just about being good to our partner, it's about being good in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because our character spills over into every area of our lives.
That's so true. Okay, so goodness, that's a big one. What about faithfulness?
I think this one is especially important in a culture where commitment is often seen as optional.
Right, like ghosting is a thing.
It is.
Yeah.
But faithfulness in a relationship, it's about being all in.
It's about choosing your partner day after day, even when it's hard.
And it's about creating that sense of security and trust where, without a shadow of a doubt that you have each other's backs no matter what.
That's the kind of foundation that can weather any storm.
It is. Okay, we're almost there.
2 more to go.
Gentleness and self-control.
Okay, those seem especially important when things get heated in a relationship.
They are, because conflict is inevitable.
It's how we handle conflict that makes all the difference.
Exactly. Gentleness is about approaching disagreements with humility and respect.
It's about choosing our words carefully, even when we're feeling angry or hurt.
Because our words have power.
And they can either build up or tear down.
So true. And self-control is about pausing before reacting
Taking a deep breath.
and choosing to respond in a way that honors both ourselves and our partner.
Because sometimes the most loving thing we can do is walk away from an argument and come back to it when we've had a chance to cool down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered all 9 fruits of the Spirit.
Phew.
That was a lot.
But it's amazing to see how they all work together to create this beautiful tapestry of love.
They do. They're all interconnected.
And I think it's important to remember that these qualities aren't just for people in relationships.
Right. This is about becoming the best versions of ourselves, period.
Whether we're single or married, young or old.
Exactly. It's a lifelong journey.
So if you're listening and you're feeling inspired to cultivate these fruits of the Spirit, start today.
Yes.
Don't wait for a relationship to magically transform you.
The work starts now.
And the article makes this really powerful point that as we become more loving and joyful and peaceful and all those good things,
We actually become more attractive.
not in a superficial way, but in a way that draws the right kind of people to us.
It's like we're emitting a different kind of energy.
Exactly. And that energy, it's contagious.
It is. It inspires others to become better versions of themselves.
So it's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. And you never know who you might be impacting.
That's so true. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's go back to that central message of the article, the importance of character.
Yes, character over title.
It's not about rushing into Mr. or Mrs.
Yeah.
It's about becoming the kind of people who are ready for a love that lasts
A love that's built on a solid foundation.
and a love that reflects the very heart of God.
That's the goal.
So, listeners, if love is a journey, not just a destination, what steps can you take today to start building the character worthy of the love you desire? Maybe revisit that article we talk about or spend some time reflecting on those fruits of the Spirit. What areas do you feel called to work on? Remember, God is with you every step of the way. And until next time, keep diving deep.